Good evening, Mr. Holomisa. It's a pleasure to have you on. Some detail being announced by the President on the procurement of vaccines for the country. I'm curious to know, how worried are you about the fact that we don't have the details around what is going into these vaccines or even the agreements that are being entered into right now?
The details should come from the Director General and his senior officers, as well as to the Minister who is doing an oversight in that department. The President has outlined the statement of an intent, so the flesh will have to be placed by the department. So what we need to do now is for the portfolio committee for the Department of Health and the media, and they must now begin to interrogate this plan tabled by the President. In doing so, the scientists must be present. The department must also be present. What also is surprising is the fact that the President has thanked the people who were tested before here in South Africa, and that companies like Aspen have produced more than 300 million vaccines already for export. The question, therefore, why did we take so long, whereas these things are manufactured in South Africa and they've been exported to other countries? Even the Indian group did test in South Africa, do it with the South Africans. But when it comes to dishing out the vaccines, we have facilities, we have factories here, we manufacture them here, then they go off the shore and then we are brought back at an astronomical prices. So it's like taking our manganese to China and other countries, and they process them on the other side and bring the finished product this side. I thought the government should be mitigating on that to say, we have used our people, we have used our facilities, but why are you charging us so much?
Sure.
So, but anyway, we welcome them.
Mr. Holomisa, I just wanted to check from you. You're saying that it's now up to, asking the health department, the minister. So far, the responses that journalists have been getting when we do ask these questions is that while a lot of these agreements are under NDA, are opposition parties like yourself going to be making any applications, whether it's under PAIA or any other form of legal framework that you can find, to actually have these documents be made public content so that we can all see what is going into these talks?
I believe that that process is underway. One of the political parties has gone to court. We may join those parties as friends of the court.
All right, DA Leader John Steenhuisen, I hope you can hear us tonight. Also joining us on the line. What we do hear from the President is that the vaccines will not be administered in secret, but as far as how we're going to finance them and pay for them, well, that remains to be seen whether or not that will be done in secret. But what we do know is that it will be centralized and will remain in government. Two questions for you this evening. Are you satisfied that we will acquire enough from the broad plan that has been outlined by the President today, from the 12 million from COVAX, the 9 million from Johnson & Johnson produced by Aspen here in South Africa in the second quarter, the 20 million from Pfizer, the 1 billion for the continent that will come from the Africa Vaccine Task Team, as well as the 7 million that was announced today that will be coming from the private sector? That's the first question. The second question, are you concerned at all about the details of how this is going to be financed?
Well, let me start with the second question first, if I may, because I think it's a very important one. And I think Kathy made the point exceptionally well a bit earlier, and it's a point we've been making since the beginning. There's no detail. President providing very broad brushstrokes this evening. We still don't have a plan. And you would have noticed this evening that what he avoided doing was giving us a date when he commits his government to us achieving that magic number of 40% of the population. And there's a very good reason for that, because after February, the only time we're going to get another significant inflow of vaccines is May. But if you look at certainly some of the projections I've seen, the bulk of the vaccines are going to only arrive, the big numbers, the 3.5 million from Pfizer, going to arrive October, November, December, and January. Now, that has significant implications, because it's clear we're not going to be able to avoid a third wave, because we're not going to have enough vaccines having landed in South Africa by May to prevent that. So in all likelihood, we probably, as the winter approaches, will move into a third wave and potentially a fourth wave after that. Professor Karim very clearly today set out that the new virus in South Africa is proving resistant to some of the vaccines, and we would have to make sure that we're upping the doses and vaccinating at a far higher rate to prevent us going into further lockdowns.
So
in terms of your first,
you're saying you are not convinced that we will certainly get them before the third quarter, as far as I'm hearing you. But are you even thinking about the realistic target that they've set? Well, they say it's realistic. Is it realistic, really, the target that they've set for themselves? Because the Minister of Health still insists, I suppose, in his address that we will vaccinate at least 40 million South Africans by the end of the year.
It's not going to happen, and I'll tell you why. Because the bulk of the vaccines are only arriving in the last quarter of this year. And if Minister Mkhize was honest with the South African public, he would share with them his presentation that he made to the Cabinet Lekgotla this last weekend, where it very clearly sets out what the timelines and timeframes are for the arrival of the variety of vaccines. We must also understand that the Pfizer vaccine that's coming is going to have very significant logistical challenges. It requires a minus 70-degree temperature to be kept. It's got to be diluted. It requires a special 0.3 syringe, which is going to significantly compromise and complicate the rollout of it. Obviously, the AstraZeneca and others are far more important. And the arrival today for the first vaccines on South African shores, while certainly welcome, we've got to put it in perspective. It's enough to vaccinate 0.8% of the population. We've got to get lots more vaccines in, and a lot sooner than the last quarter of this year. And that's why we've got to unleash the private sector and private enterprise to be able to get as many vaccines as possible. Government should approve a variety of vaccines that are safe to be used, and then should decentralize the acquisition thereof and say, go into the world and get vaccines and bring as many as you can to South Africa, because we have to reach that magic number of 40%. Otherwise, herd immunity is not going to be something we achieve until late this year or early next year.
Sure.
And by then, we're going to go through a few other waves.
All right. Let me bring into this conversation then General Holomisa. We have you back on the line. We seem to have just lost your connection there. You were telling us about your party's plans to join the court action that is currently underway, which of course is challenging really at the heart of it, the strategy of government when it comes to the procurement of COVID-19 vaccines.
Yes, I said we may consider joining the court as friends of the court following, I think there's a party already which has filed papers. So we don't want to compete with that political party.
All right, General Bantu Holomisa there. Thanks for your time. John Steenhuisen, he's the leader of the Democratic Alliance. Thanks for your time too as well tonight.